We originally didn't have a PowerPoint to do today. The ideas are evolving fairly rapidly for how we want this presentation to look. And they finally culminated at 10:30 a.m. this morning during the break. And we now have a PowerPoint. Ordinarily, we've been doing this for small groups of PARC leadership around the country, mainly just the senior leadership in small conference rooms. And I've just been drawing pictures on flip charts and free associating and making it up as I go. So when I saw the size of the room and the size of the crowd, we did a PowerPoint. There are 4 slides. The presentation part takes 10, 20 minutes at the most, and then you can drill these guys for questions. I'm going to let you do it. Just go ahead and give me the next slide. What we've been developing, the title really doesn't say, of the presentation, doesn't say what it is that we've been working on. PRIYA and ERNIE, last several months, have been working very hard to get PARC aligned and functional nationwide, as functional as we'd like for it to be. And they approached me in particular and asked me for some secrets as to why the Southeastern working group, regional working group, was so successful. And it's taken me a long time to sort of capture my ideas in words, but we're slowly getting there. And so what we're going to talk about today is the adaptive management model, the applied conservation biology model that we're using and trying to deploy nationwide for PARC to get other regions of the country that are involved in PARC to be as successful as the Southeast and as the Northeast have been, and the Midwest coming on strong as well. This is, every organization has its own version of the adaptive management flowchart. This is just the one that we've been using lately for PARC. And we start with the information gathering working groups, which for PARC are our research working group and our inventory and monitoring working group. I didn't put monitoring up there because this is going to come in elsewhere. But this is where we get our decision-making process. This is the knowledge base for everything we do. And then you can give me another click there. Then we have 3 implementation working groups right now, and a 4th one that is proposed that we're going to try a pilot project on at our annual meeting coming up in February. Policy, Trade, and Regulation working group, the Management working group, the Education and Outreach working group, and the Protection working group is the one that we've proposed, Land Protection. Give me another click. And then our Judicial branch is our Monitoring working group, which keeps everybody else honest and straight. I'm going to come out there. I'm not comfortable up here. We can do this unplugged. Can you hear me? Let's do this unplugged, because I want to be able to see this too. Maybe in some parts of the country this all works great. In the Southeast it doesn't. In the Southeast, the folks over here on the information gathering working group have a lot of distrust and a lot of distaste for the folks over here in the implementation working group. They don't communicate, they don't get along, they don't talk to each other, they backstab, they snipe. That happens in the Southeast. I don't know, probably it works great here, right? You guys don't have that problem at all, right? Our brain trust, these guys over here in the Southeast, accuse those guys over there of being, let's see, rednecks, yahoos, so mid-20th century. Didn't you read my publication? And a lot of that is true. Well, I mean, think about it. How many times have you made a great discovery and had somebody act on it immediately? It just doesn't happen. You got to beat these people over the head. We've got them involved in the South. We're getting them engaged in the Southeast. On the other hand, these guys over here have quite a different opinion of our eggheads. They accuse them of diddling and dabbling in academic curiosities and not giving me something I can use, not giving me something the guy on the tractor can understand. So there's a lot of that doesn't work there. It's just not functional. What we're trying to create in the Southeast is a conservation machine, an entire community where all the wheels are turning together, where all the pistons are firing, where there's a lot of complementarity between different disciplines. We have different skills and we have different disciplines for a reason, because they complement each other. Because what one can't do, he can get from the other. What one doesn't have, she can get from the other. And what we're putting together is what should ideally, I work as a conservation planner, by the way. What I do is take these guys' intelligence and get these guys something they can act on, and then create monitoring plans out of that. What we're trying to do is get a system where if you're selecting a research project and doing an experimental design, you're doing that with full awareness of what knowledge gaps exist over here. These people have just, a lot of them have just gone through massive planning processes. Go ahead and give me 2 more clicks, if you don't mind. A lot of these guys have just gone through massive planning processes, especially with the SWIG plans. We don't call them that anymore, but whatever we're calling them now, SWIG plans. If they're honest, they've identified huge data gaps. And they've also identified funding that they've set aside to fill those data gaps. So they've got questions that we as scientists can answer. Okay? They also have a little bit of money. In fact, it's an unprecedented amount of money right now in non-game conservation coming from the federal government into the states. So funding is available if we select our research projects in a way that is meaningful to people who are implementing conservation on the ground. So far, everybody I've heard is doing a great job here. You guys don't, we have some real doozies in the Southeast, but you probably have your share of those too, but you guys are a pretty functional bunch. The other thing is, we try to get the information when you're jumping up and down and screaming with that paper that's so important that you've just learned, like Whit was saying earlier. Had no idea about these long wave explosive patterns in population dynamics in fairly undisturbed systems. When something like that gets your attention, and some of the things you guys have talked about today that you've learned from your studies, and you're jumping up and down saying, please act on this. How do you get these people over here to listen? Well, PARC is a vehicle for that. We have publications, we have people who know people, we have a full-time state program coordinator, state agency coordinator, who does nothing but states for us. You guys have met PRIYA. You guys have met ERNIE. He does nothing full-time but work with federal agencies to get your ideas acted on and to get you funding if you need it. Then we have a lot of really, really motivated people in corners of the world you wouldn't expect to find them, and it takes a lot of digging to get them. We have a lot of cooperation with forest products industry in the Southeast. We have a lot of cooperation with the hook and bullet crowd in the Southeast. We're getting really good with Ducks Unlimited, with Whitetail Unlimited, Quail Unlimited, Wild Turkey Federation. We'd really like to, we're not where we want to be. We never will be. And this is not, it says in the abstract, this is a successful model. It's not a successful model yet. It is becoming more successful. And finally, if we get this whole thing turning like we want to, and get the whole conservation community firing on all cylinders, everybody complimenting everybody else's efforts, everybody communicating, everybody getting along as best as can be expected. A little fist fight every now and then is okay. But the M word, we have to seriously talk about, and we don't get enough support for that from the agencies, and we think we're going to get it now with the SWIG plans. And I know you guys have some programs out here that are great, and by its very definition, DAPTF is doing great work with monitoring. But we have to monitor two things. We have to monitor what we're implementing. In other words, if your research shows that one of your state partners or one of your NGO partners, or the Nature Conservancy, for example, my former employer, shows that your research shows that they need 2,000 acres of habitat type X to continue to perpetuate assemblage C. Then there's implementation monitoring that needs to happen. You know, they need to be held accountable. Did they go out and protect those 2,000 acres? That's step one. Step two is, did the species respond as predicted? We do have to, there's a huge need with all the implementation that's going on within the Nature Conservancy, within the states, within various other large conservation initiatives right now. Are they successful? And are the species responding as protected, as predicted? So I think we're finally going to see monitoring getting some of its share of attention. But I think we still have a long way to go on getting it where it needs to be. But I just want to mention, too, while we're talking about monitoring, we treat these as a single working group because they are identical protocols. We have an inventory and monitoring working group. But where and how they're deployed and how they're funded are really two different things. And we probably need to address that at some point. How this works is, I'm just going to button this up right now and then we'll just have a panel discussion. I'm just making this up as I go. When our members come to a meeting, they either already have been or they can, at that meeting, affiliate themselves with one or more of these working groups. Then after having a meeting like you guys are having here, where we select maybe a subset of all the conservation issues in our region, we'll send them off into breakout groups by working group. And we'll ask them to come back with some action steps, with some issues that need to be addressed further. And we also ask them to think about the other working groups. If you're in the research working group, and you break out and we give you 3 hours for all the researchers to go talk about what research issues they have. We also want them to come back and tell us where they need help from the education outreach working group, what the habitat management working group can do to help them, what the policy and trade group can do to help them better do their jobs, and maybe an action step or two for the inventory and monitoring working group. So by having everybody think about everybody else's job and getting everybody out of their sort of little myopic silo of expertise, we wind up having, to the extent possible, a community that really functions. Like I said, we still have our fist fights, and that's probably the best part of it. But as a whole, we're working towards having a conservation community that really functions. And we have free beer at all our meetings. And if you ask me what would be a single source of our success, I would say probably the free beer. If something were to happen that were to prevent us from being able to have free beer at a meeting, I would probably cancel the meeting because nobody would come. They come for the beer. We're having our meeting this year at a Methodist camp. It's a private inholding in the Conecuh National Forest. More frog species than any other national forest in the system. And we've had to say no drinking, no smoking, no cussing, no co-ed cohabitation in the dormitories. But just so happens one of our members has a piece of land with a cabin on it about a half a mile away. And we've approached members of the timber industry about sponsoring a big tent with some heat blowers. And I think we're going to pull this off. There will be beer. You can go on to the next slide if you want to back there, guys. I'm done with the talk part of it and just do the shameless self-promotion up there. Bye, bye, bye. Operators are standing by. So come on down. We got free pony rides for all the little buckaroos. How much time we got?
You have about 45 minutes.
We got 45 minutes to jaw about this. So there's all sorts of different ways we can make this stuff work. Right now it's any which way we can. And I was talking to Don from Frog. I like the way y'all spell that. That's the way we say it down south, Frog. doing a lot of the same things, and some of it better than we are, I think, doing a great job on it. So I think there's some real opportunities for partnership there. And then Dee Dee brought up some good points earlier too. There's a lot of opportunities for joining forces on some of this stuff.